Okay, are your notes out? You ready to go? Okay, well, here we go. Today's lesson is 4-7, day 1. Okay, most of the teaching is done today. Tomorrow's quicker. It's Friday, yeah, we have more time to work. But here's the deal. You have to really pay attention on day 1 because if you get day 1, day 2 is so easy. Okay? This section is all about this. Inverse what? Trig functions. Inverse trig functions. What are they again? You might know them as inverse sine, inverse cosine, inverse tangent. Does that ring a bell? Okay, when I ask you this, when I say inverse sine, I have to give you something inside here. What do I give you? It's a word. Theta. Nope, it's not theta. It's a ratio. There it is. I have to give you a ratio. Now, what's a ratio? Like 2/3, 4/5, like that. I just have to give you a ratio. And all it is a comparison of this side compared to this side. But what comes out of this? What's the answer? What? An angle. There it is. There we go. We got it. That's it. This is today's lesson. I will give you inverse sine, cosine, tangent. I will give you a ratio. And I expect you to come up with what? The angle. Okay, that's what you're doing today. Today's answers will be what? Angles. Now, hang on. What have you been doing most of this chapter? Most of this chapter I have been giving you what's this? I've been saying what's sine of, and if I ask you that, what's inside here now? The angle. The word sine is just, you have to know the angle in order to tell me, over here you're going to get what? The sine of an angle will be a ratio. Okay? Isn't this kind of weird? Here you are given a ratio, but you tell me the angle. Here you're given an angle, but then you give me the ratio. So, when you look at it, guys, if that's x, hey, if that's x, and that's y, look at this x, look at this y. Aren't they reversed? Aren't they switched? And if they're actually switched, isn't this what we did in chapter 1? If you switch x and y, you just found the inverse. That's what you did in chapter 1. I said, find the inverse. And yes, the first step is switch x and y. That's what's been done for you. So what's the inverse of sine? Inverse sine is the inverse of. Okay? Does that make some sense? Okay. Now, we're going to go on and do more, but you'll see how it works. Okay? So let's just go back and review something you did back in section 4.3. Would you take that triangle and solve it for theta? Here's theta. You have to do something. You can't sit there and just stare. Do something. Find theta. You know how to do this. You've done it on a quiz. So which trig function did you go with? Tangent, because you knew the what side? Opposite. You knew what side? What other side? Adjacent. I hope you went with tangent, did you? Tangent of my angle equals what over what? 13/20. Okay. And then, of course, you want the angle. And when when you want the angle, you're going to have to perform what? How do you get rid of the word tangent? Inverse tangent knocks out what? Tangent. So you have to do what? Inverse tangent of your ratio is 1324. Answer? 28.4. Okay. Degrees? Right? Okay, you know what? You can give me answers two different ways. One is in degrees, one is in radians. Would you please give me the radian answer? Just convert your calculator back to radians and then just do that whole thing over again.
0.47.
What?
0.48.
0.48?
Yeah, I got
496.
Okay. So yours is 0.49?
6. No, really.
It's
So
like
it's
0.496. So if you did it to the nearest thousands, is that it? It's just shy of what? 0.5. Just a little shy of 0.5. Do you even know what radians are again?
Yes.
I'm not sure what the word is.
How far did you take your radius and wrap it around the circle? You only went, how far?
0.5.
Half a radius. If your radius is this long, you took half your radius and you wrapped it around the circle. Doesn't that kind of make sense? Because the answer is 28 degrees. 28 degrees is only this far. You took your radius, half your radius, wrapped it halfway. You didn't get very far, did you? That should make some sense. This is always confusing to students. Why is it 0.4? Because it's 0.4 radius wrapped around your circle. Good? Now, would you go back up here quickly and just look at this? The inverse function, I know you did tangent, but the inverse function of y equals sine of x is going to be what? Y equals inverse sine of x. They're inverses. Or your book, this is how your book writes it. I want you to know this before I move on. Your book does not write this. Your book writes what? Arc sine. So arc sine to you means what? Inverse sine. So if you ever want to do this, look at your book and go, I don't like that. I'd rather write this. I understand that better. Go for it. But if you don't care, then you don't care. That's inverse sine. Good? So your book won't say inverse tangent. Your book will say what? Arc tangent. That's what your book's going to say. Just so you know that. Okay? All right. Next slide. As functions, look at these functions. These relations must pass the horizontal line test to have an inverse. Okay. What function am I looking at? What's this? Sine or cosine? How do you know it's sine? Starts at 0. What's the next one? How do you know it's cosine? Starts at the max. Okay. This one, you don't know. It is tangent, but you don't know it because you never did it. I'm not going to make you do it because we're running out of time. Christmas is coming. So here's the deal. If you drew a horizontal line test through it, look, how many times do you hit the function? Once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, forever. Does it have an inverse if you hit it more than once? No. So you know what? None of these functions have inverses. So we got to do something to make sure it works. So here's what we're going to do. So we must limit the domain of the sine function. Here's the sine function right here. Okay? So we have to do something to make sure it works. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. On the sine function, we're going to look right here, all the way to here. If I just look at this piece of sine, just this piece, does sine have an inverse? Why? Because the horizontal line hits it what? Once. If that's what I have to do to make this work, then I'm going to do it. So what I just told you is this. We're only looking at this part of the sine function so that our inverse works. Where is this right here? Happens to be at 90 degrees. Where's this? Negative 90 degrees. So now what I'm telling you is when you do an inverse sine function of x, you only get angles from what to what? Yeah, negative 90 to 90. So there's 90, and there's negative 90. So what did I just do to you? I restricted your domain. When you give me answers for inverse sine, you can only go up to what? 90. You can't say 91. You can't say 92. You can go to negative 90. You can't say negative 91, 92, 93. Doesn't work. Anything between positive 90 and negative 90. Or how about this? Positive pi over 2 or what? Yeah. That is inverse sine. That's your domain. So I'm going to write that down for you. That's domain. Okay? Say good. You get it? Why did I have to do that?
So it works.
So it works, yeah. The original sine function, it doesn't have an inverse because you hit it way too many times with the horizontal line. Okay, so if that's the case, let's take a look at this. Y equals arc sine of 1/2. Wait a minute, don't like this. What can you do in your book today? Sine negative 1. So you could just do this, couldn't you? Okay. If you want to, you can. Okay, y equals inverse sine of negative 1/2 or positive 1/2 means, what does it mean to you? It actually means this. I want to know what angle. What angle actually gives me a ratio of 1/2. That's what it means. And I think you already have the answer, don't you? What is the answer?
30.
It says 30, right? That's cheating. You were supposed to come up with that by yourself, and you guys had that answer. So how are we going to get that answer if we're on our own? We're going to go like this. First, we're going to go like this. We're going to draw where the answer would be. So I know this means give me the angle, but if your ratio is positive, which quadrant are you in? This one or this one? You're in quadrant 1. So you can go ahead and do this right now. Okay? Now, you know the ratio is 1/2. Well, 1/2, sine is just y over what? R. So the y value is 1 and the radius is what? That's what it looks like. And then you should know this is the square root of 3. Now this is the answer right here, guys. Right here. That's the answer. How far have I went? Too far. Look, that's 1. What's opposite of 1? What angle?
30.
30. The answer is 30 degrees. And that's how you're going to do this thing. So when you are asked inverse sine, inverse cosine, inverse tangent, I want the angle. That's what I want. Do you have questions? Do it. Inverse sine of negative square root 2. These are the non-calculator problems on the test. If you have an answer, show me. You know what I'm saying? You were telling me up in the first quadrant.
Crazy, but
You drew it. You drew it. Right? It's nice. It's just isn't asking for radians.
Okay.
You can give me angles, but then you gotta convert that.
Okay.
Okay, you guys have answers, right? Okay, so you're. Trying to read it. Yes, and then you should give me radians because the book is going to ask for radians. You broke the rule. And the rule is inverse sine has to be in quadrant 1 and 4. You can't go to 2, you can't go to 3. You're in 3. That's it? What's this? Here's 0. There's the answer. No, I don't, but you know what? On the test.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. You guys get it? Yes. Where is it? That one? Slightly wrong. Slightly wrong. Okay. Watch. Inverse. Hey, inverse sine, go like this. If you don't like that again, go like this. Cross it out, inverse sine of a ratio, right? Your answer is what? Your answer is an angle. Well, you better be able to go to the right quadrant. Where do we have our domain? From 90 to what? Negative 90. You can't go anywhere else. And since your ratio is negative, which quadrant are you in? Sine is negative. 4. Right here. Okay. Look at the numbers. Square root of 2 over 2. This comes from which triangle?
45.
It is 45. Okay, 1, negative 1, square root of 2. And of course, you're doing inverse sine, so you know this is your angle. Opposite y value over the r value. Is this over this really that? Yes, it is. So it is a 45. What's your answer? From here to here. Isn't it this? Isn't it a negative 45? Okay. Or what? Right? They want radians. In the book, they want radians, just so you know. Good? That and that. Find the exact values. Hey, the word exact values basically means what? No calculator. Okay? So you have to do 2 things to this ratio. What do you have to do? What do you have to do first? Nobody's talking. Look inside. What do you have to do first? The inverse sine of 1/2. Get an answer, and then do what? Then do sine. I feel like we just did it, didn't we? What is inverse sine of 1/2? You guys, you just did this on the previous slide. What is inverse sine of 1/2? 30 degrees. Oh, okay. What is now? I'm asking you what sine of this angle? Oh, sine of an angle is going to give you a ratio, right? Well, 30 degrees looks like this. 30 degrees. 1 over 2 and square root of 3.
Can't you just cross out sine
What's the answer?
and
Lauren says, can I just cross out sine and inverse sine?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
Because they're inverses of each other. What's the inverse of add 5? Subtract 5. What's the inverse of multiply by 5? Divide by 5. Inverses just do what?
Cancel each other.
Yeah, guys. You could have just did this, and the answer's what? Half. You didn't have to do anything. You just have to know they're inverses. So what's the answer to the next one? It's like a free point on your test next week. If you get that wrong, you You didn't listen. Okay? And by the way, it works with cosine and arc cosine, and tangent and arc tangent. Okay? Okay. Let's go on to cosine and see what happens. Ready? Everything works the same for the inverse of cosine, except we must restrict the domain differently, and the question is why. Okay, here, watch. I'll show you. Remember how we did 90 degrees to negative 90? Can we say that's our domain? Why not? Because if we look at that part of the function, is there an inverse?
No.
Why not?
Because the horizontal line.
Horizontal line, if you draw it, boom, hits it twice, hits it twice, hits it twice. There's no inverse to cosine between there and there. So the question is, why? Because from negative 90 to 90, I hit it twice with a horizontal line. It doesn't have an inverse. Unless I look at what? If I look at it differently, and how differently is that?
Over
Look from here, all the way where? To right here. If you just look here to here, guys, does it have an inverse now? I think so. I hit it once with every horizontal line. It does work now. Now I have an inverse. So you know what they say for cosine? Restrict your domain from where? 0 radians all the way to what? No, it's not 90. It's pi. That's 180. That's pi. Okay. So there's your domain. You only talk about 0 with pi. So now come over here to your circle and write this down for yourself. When I give answers for inverse cosine, here's inverse cosine of x. Where's my answer going to fall? Between what? Between what? 0 radians, so you have to be what? Greater than or equal to 0 radians, but less than or equal to what? Pi radians. You cannot give me third or fourth quarter answers. You can't. It just doesn't work. Okay? There it is. And by the way, do you know that your calculator has been programmed to know this? Your calculator will not give you answers down here. Even though there are answers down there, it won't do it. It's programmed to only give you one answer. Here for positive, here for negative. Okay? That's it. So what about tangent? How does tangent look? Here's tangent. You and I never did this. This is what I skipped just to save time. But here's what tangent looks like. Tangent rides vertical asymptotes right here. Right here. Why is tangent undefined? Sorry. Why are there vertical asymptotes? Because tangent's undefined where? At 90, at negative 90, at negative 270. This would be positive 270. So tangent's negative, or sorry, undefined in places. So what we do is we just look at one of these little segments right here. Does it have an inverse between here and here?
Yes.
Yes. This limit is what? 90. Back to what? Negative 90. So basically, your domain is right here. Doesn't that look the same as what? Sine? It is. It is. So inverse, if you ever get this, you give answers between what? Pi over 2 all the way down to what? Negative pi over 2. There's your domain. That's what you work with. You only work with quadrant 1 and 4. So which two inverse functions have the same domain? Sine and tangent. Now, cosine's different, and cosine is the hard one. If you're going to get something wrong on your test next week, it's going to be which one? It's cosine. Cosine will mess you up. Want to try it?
I mean, I don't
Yeah, you do want to try it. Try cosine. See if it messes you up today. Try to get the answer to that. If there's a hard one, it is cosine. Cosine's kind of hard. What angle? I'm asking you for what angle? I started by drawing where can I give answers for cosine? 1 and 2. That's all this. The only place I can give answers. Okay. Okay. And then of course they're gonna say radians.
Okay, got it.
Same thing. You get it back here? Oops. And the same. And then they do write it in radians. No. You are in the 4th quadrant for cosine. Cosine was defined to be in the middle quadrants 1 and 2. The inverse cosine is between 0 and pi. You're way in the fourth quadrant.
Wait,
Yes. $60? No, it's the answer is always from 0 to the terminal side. Because it's negative. It's not it either. 2. I'll show you in a second. All right, guys. Ready? Inverse cosine of this over this? Well, you guys, that's a negative ratio. What quadrant? Where's cosine negative? Which quadrant? 2. Okay, it's over here. There it is, right there. Now, here's the deal. They gave you the ratio as this over that. Well, this is x over what? R. So the x value this way is, right? The r value is what? 2. Which means this side has to be 1. Now, everything's about the reference angle. If this is 1, this is what? Okay. Now the answer is not 30 degrees. The answer will always be initial side to what? Terminal side. This is the answer. What is it? 150. But 150 in radians is? That's probably the book's answer. This is also the answer, but the book will tell you, put it in radians, okay? Try tangent. Inverse tangent. The inverse. I'm trying to remember what it is. Hang on. Yeah, that should work. Yeah.
I can only
Is that -5? Or is it? Yeah. Yep.
I can check this.
Where'd you get it? Oh, that's the same thing I like to do. You drew it down here and you wrote positive.
oh, my man done.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Baker.
Now, get one of these.
It works.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right, guys. Inverse tangent, the domain is what? You can only give me answers where? Yeah, you cannot give me 150 degrees. You can't say that. 0 to 90, 0 to negative 90, that's all you can say. So, this is a negative ratio, so you're down here. Would you guys agree? Okay, do you look and see that square root of 3? It's got to come from what triangle? 30, 60, 90. Then you got to go like this. Go draw yourself a 30. A 30, 60, 90. Well, this would be square root of 3. This would be 1. This would be 2. And now you're going to do tangent, right? What's tangent of 30? 1 over this. But 1 over this, is that this?
No.
Well, yeah, but I'll fix it in a second. Is 1 divided by this really square root of 3 over 3? Yeah, so it is a 30. So if it's a 30, that means the reference angle is 30. And you got what? A 1, a 2, a square root of 3. And this 1 is negative, right? So it works. What is tangent of 30? This over this, which is this. What are we going to write? Negative 30 degrees slash negative pi over what? The next two should take you 5 seconds.
Done.
Tangent followed by inverse tangent does what?
Asshole.
What's the answer?
3 over 3.
The next two? Inverse cosine, cosine? Answer?
4 pi over 3. Just trying to screw you up.
Okay. Good. I hope. Last slide. Sometimes we don't need to know the angle in order to evaluate it. Sometimes we don't even need to know the angle. Simplify these. Hint. Make a what? Make a triangle. Draw yourself. Can you cancel this with this? Can you just cancel these out? No. These are not inverse functions. You can't. So you got to think about it. And what I'm telling you to do is make a what here? Make a picture of a triangle. A picture of a triangle right from this. Ignore cosine. Just ignore cosine. This is inverse sine, right? So which quadrant are you in, first or fourth? How do you know it's first? The ratio is positive. Go like this. Boom, boom. Go like that. Now that you drew the picture, like I told you to, put numbers where they belong. What does the 3 stand for? Y, and then the 5 is your radius. Because sine is y over r. 3 over what? 3 over 5. Creates this triangle. Remember, everything's based off your reference. Here's your reference. And you don't know your reference. So are you going to be able to find cosine of your angle? Your angle is what? Theta. I don't even know it. I don't know my angle, but do I need to? No, because I have the triangle. 3, 5, what's this side?
4.
And how would you know it's 4? That is a special right triangle, 3, 4, 5. But if you didn't know that, could you do Pythagorean theorem to get the 4?
Yep.
Yeah, you could. I'm not going to do it, but you could. So what is cosine? X over r. X over r is what? 4/5, you got it. Boom. Do the next one, then we're done. Draw a picture. Draw a picture. If you have it, I will look at it. There.
Do you want us to like simplify that?
Yep. What else? Yeah, if you could. Yeah. If anybody has it, just say it, and I'll look. I'll give you a thumbs up. Thumbs down. Inverse cosine only belongs in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. You have what kind of ratio? Negative. Where's cosine negative? Here or here? 2. Okay, go like this. Just draw that triangle. Now you are already told that you have this x value over this r value. So what's your x value?
1.
From there to there, negative 1. R value? 3. There's your triangle. There's your angle. That's your reference angle, right there. That angle is right here now. So what's tangent of theta? Problem is, you don't have what? Tangent's y over, it's y over x, right? So how do you get the y value? Pythagorean theorem, what'd you get? Square root of 8, but that simplifies to 2 what? Square root of 2. So, y, what's y? 2 square root of 2 over what? X is negative 1. Simplifies to what? Yeah?
I believe so.
I didn't see many of these. I saw a couple of you had it, and then I kind of rushed you because I knew the time was coming to an end. So I rushed you. Do you get what happened? All right. That's the majority of the lesson. Tomorrow there won't be as much to talk about. So Lauren, check it out on YouTube. I'll have it up by Saturday.
Alright.
Well, she might not be able to stream it or be able to view it. It'll be slowed down.
Yeah.
Thing like hers.
Oh,
She might be able
yeah.
to.
You might not have to correct